I only ever seem to really appreciate a place when I'm brushing my teeth because it's so different from, where you usually do it.
All right, sit back, relax, and hope the road doesn't break. We've never been this far southwest in China, and this is the furthest southwest point in China.
You really have to get beyond Beijing and the Great Wall to see what's happening in China right now.
Man, talk about a great way to keep a tradition alive.
I'm Jeff Hutchins, and I'm a photographer.
I'm Peter Hutchins, and I'm a filmmaker.
We grew up in China, and now we're going back
to capture China in its moment of change.
When most of us think of the Chinese, we probably imagine someone from the majority ethnic group, the Han. People who speak Mandarin, read and write characters, and have the classic Han features.
But in a country of over 1 billion people, there are dozens of distinct ethnic minorities. And Jeff and I have started wondering how China's massive modernization program is affecting them.
We were told this ethnic minority park would be a great introduction to China's minorities. But I gotta say, if the entrance of this park is anything like the rest of it, this might not be the best place for a genuine cultural experience.
Yunnan is in southern China and home to 25 of China's minorities, making it one of the most culturally and geographically diverse provinces in China. The northwest borders the mountains of Tibet, while Yunnan's deep south borders the steamy jungles of Myanmar, Vietnam, and Laos. The government created this national minority park, designed to preserve and showcase the traditions of different minority groups.
But it's more like a theme park than a real place.
And every time you turn a corner, you're in another ethnic enclave.
This is foot traffic. Let's check out this Dai village.
The Dai are the second largest ethnic group in Yunnan. And from what I've heard, I'd rather be a man here than a woman.
Traditionally, Dai women were not educated.
Boys, on the other hand, were often sent to be monks for a time, where they learned the Dai language and Buddhist teachings. But inside this minority, the Moso, the women rule the roost. So this is the Moso village.
Yeah, these guys are pretty interesting because it's actually a matriarchal society. And you don't see that in a lot of other parts of China.
Yeah, the Chinese actually refer to this as ladies' country.
Sounds like a decent place.
Yeah, well, it has something to do with the idea of walking marriages. People don't stay married for life. It's actually women's choice, and the guys come and go as the women want them to, and they don't even raise their own children.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Dude. Come on! That is so uncool.
Time to ditch the carts and trappings of this government minorities theme park.
We thought we were being smart by coming to Yunnan during Chinese New Year. But we're beginning to have second thoughts.
They've decided to put on a fireworks display just outside our window that continues well into the night.
They love their fireworks.
Yep, they really do. The next morning, we have the streets to ourselves.
I mean, it must have been some party last night. Look at all this debris on the ground. You can actually still hear the firecrackers going off, too.
Yeah, I have a feeling this thing's gonna be going for quite a while.
So Jeff and I are going to meet a teacher today, and we have Chinese New Year gifts, oranges for the adults, red bags for the kids.
The new Jiangsu Autonomous Prefecture is about 600 kilometers from Yunnan's capital city, so we're pretty close to the Myanmar border.
Unlike many mainstream Han Chinese, ethnic minorities are generally allowed to have more than one child. And we're also wondering, in an area as ethnically diverse as Yunnan, whether that makes intermarriage between the different groups more likely. You know, it'll be interesting to see, even just looking at the Li Su, how one group's changes, they're probably the same changes shared by all the different ethnic groups out here. Looks like motorcycles are the popular form of transportation.
先生，对不起，我们要去等更，可以？好，好。
We head out into Li Su country, which means agriculture. The Li Su have been farmers for countless generations, and very few have made the move to the big cities.
Off-road.
好的，谢谢。
We meet the teacher and her family in a house overlooking the new river.
Ying. Hello.
Welcome to our house.
你好. So you're Ying. It's nice to finally meet you.
It's nice to see you too.
Yeah. Very nice to meet
This
you.
is great out here.
This is my sister.
你好。
你好，
我叫 Jeff。
我叫朱明。
朱明。
你好，我叫 Peter.
好好，你好，我叫朱明。
你好，这个地方是的不错. This is really pretty here.
Yeah, you can see the whole river down here. This is just beautiful.
So we have a small gift to say Happy New Year. These red envelopes are for the kids. And I figured since we've seen these all over the streets, they must be pretty popular here. So these are for you, for welcoming us into your home.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Here,
much.
I'll put
Thank
those
you,
there.
Thank you.
So whose house is this?
This is my elder sister's house.
Okay.
And that's so you actually there are more than one child in your family then
Yeah.
when you grew up. So that's different, I think, from the Han Chinese are only allowed to have one child, right? But the minority groups can have as many two children.
Two children.
Oh, two.
Ying explains that the Li Su are limited to 2 children. We meet and greet Ying's extended family.
我叫 Peter.
你好。
你好。
They are my nieces.
Okay. 你们好.
This is my son.
Oh, wow.
你好。
好，你叫什么名字？
我叫段林欣。
大林心。好。
They are my nephews.
Is your family like the rest of Yunnan, where there are a lot of different minority groups in one area?
请喝水。
谢谢。
My brother is Jingpo, but he married with Li Su. And my sister married with Han. He comes from Sichuan. And I'm Jingpo, but my husband is Bai. He's come from Dali. There are many minorities in my family, but we love each other. We help each other.
Maintaining an ethnic identity within China's cultural melting pot isn't always easy.
China's policy is for all of its people to adopt Han language and culture, which means ethnic groups must learn Mandarin. Ying teaches Li Su children at a local boarding school, and to do that, she needs to know at least 2 languages.
Most of my students are Li Su. They all come from in the mountain, and before they come to school, they couldn't speak Han. And the teacher must use 2 languages, Li Su language and Han languages.
As we talk, we can't help noticing the smells of dinner wafting over from the kitchen.
That's because Ying's husband is preparing the New Year's meal.
And then, the words we've been waiting for.
Shall we eat?
Yeah. Man, this looks like quite a feast.
Yeah, this is great. They've got fish, my favorite. In this part of China, meals are usually eaten sitting cross-legged on the floor, with bowls and chopsticks.
And they've really put out a spread for us. Or maybe to celebrate the new year.
Yeah, beef's incredible.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite dish by far.
We toast the new year. Good health and good luck.
The next morning, Ying meets us at our hotel to take us to the annual Lisu Spring Festival. It sounds like a pretty typical kind of celebration, with traditional singing and dancing.
But she also mentions walking on coals, something called the sword ladder, and a crossbow competition.
And how do we get there?
Take a bus.
Mayhem.
Apparently, we're not the only ones going to the festival. The bus stops are crowded, and so are the buses. Ying tells us that at least half of the people going to the festival are tourists.
Bus travel in this part of China used to be rare, and so were paved roads.
You can see why Yunnan stayed isolated for so long. It's nothing but mountains and rivers, you know.
It used to take hours for people to walk to the festival. Now, people get a 15-minute ride in relative luxury.
And at least one rider is obviously headed to the crossbow competition. I sure hope that thing's not loaded.
This place is hopping.
Sure is.
So, oh, these are the sword ladders. These are, the story behind these, apparently the legend is that General Wang Ji, who was part of the Ming Dynasty, fought so well that he had to climb mountains of swords and cross seas of fire. So I think that's where the sword ladders and the walking on hot coals come from.
Wow. It doesn't look like fun, does it?
No, it's 36 swords high.
It's the same one down over here, too?
Yeah. And the crosses in between are supposed to be like getting to the next level of spiritual blessing.
Okay.
So I guess if you get past each rung, then, you know.
And that's one up on your heavenly karma?
Yeah.
That's got to cut your feet climbing this.
I know.
Wouldn't you think?
See, I didn't think they would be all that sharp, but
No, that's definitely sharp.
yeah, it's definitely.
We pass a group of Lisu women on stage in their traditional dress. Singing is like a second language for the Lisu. Even their history is performed as a song. But we spot a revolving wooden swing set that looks a little more our style.
I normally try to avoid Chinese Ferris wheels, but you know, maybe the Lisu make them better.
Well, this definitely looks like it's up to code, I'm sure. I'm sure there's never been any problems with this.
Yeah. There's evidently only one way to get on, so we go for it.
You got it?
Yep. All right, here we go.
You gotta go forward.
Go! Woo! You gotta get on with me.
All right.
It takes a little practice, but once you get it going, the thing actually works. I love it. A Ferris wheel that runs on your own steam.
This is obviously a very well-oiled machine. I don't hear any squeaking, do you?
No squeaking at all. And it looks like the key is just running at the bottom and then just swinging your weight, because otherwise you get stuck up there all day.
Yeah, it's that pa, pa, pa.
Some things don't need to be modernized. And while all this is going on, no matter where you are or what you're doing, you can always hear an announcer on a PA system. I can't imagine that the Lisu festival was always this overdone.
Frenetic, exactly.
So, when you were small, was it like this, the festival?
It is a little different. When I was a small child, and the farmers, lots of farmers, and they circle, and they sing their songs all day and all night.
So it used to be just a circle of farmers singing their songs, and now it's turned into this.
We circle back just in time to see the Lisu men climbing the sword ladder.
The swords aren't razor sharp, but they're not something I'd want to put my bare feet and my weight on.
Not to mention, by the time they get to the top, the climbers are about 5 stories high.
One of the climbers tells us that in the days when their grandfathers climbed the sword ladder, it symbolized the sacrifices everyone had to make for their culture. Today, it seems like everybody just does it for fun.
So now it sounds like this whole festival, and especially the sword climbing, is a lot less about spirituality and a lot more about tourism.
The festival may be evolving into a tourist attraction, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot to see and remember.
Like the hot springs down by the river.
The very hot springs.
That's hot. That's not warm. That's definitely hot.
Most of the guys in the pool are just sitting around relaxing, but there's some bathing going on too. Every spring, Lisu people come from far and wide to bathe here. They believe it brings good health.
This must feel good for you, Jeff. You haven't taken a bath in months.
I think it's closer to a year now, going on a year.
Yeah.
And after a hot bath, there's nothing like building a really hot fire. And then, of course, dancing around it.
And while you're dancing, the fire is burning down until it's a bed of very hot coals.
According to folklore, a Ming Dynasty warrior is said to have walked on a sea of flames. So the Lisu men pay tribute and kick up some coals.
What is the secret? I mean, it must be how fast they're moving their legs or the fact that they're keeping air contact or something.
I think the secret was the amount of alcohol they probably put away before hopping out onto the coals.
Oh, check out this guy.
Look how much ash they're kicking up, or just the sparks all over the place.
I thought they were going to wait till it died down. Whoa.
As we watched the Lisu men braving the hot coals, we realized we never got to see the Lisu crossbows in action.
It still looks pretty hot to me.
That's impressive.
Fortunately, the festival lasts for another few days, so we'll still get our chance.
So Ying, yesterday you mentioned that there's a crossbow competition, and I see there's guys over here with crossbows. I mean, can we buy one?
Yeah, if you like, you can.
Really?
Yeah.
好，你好，可以看一下。Wow, that's really solid. It's a lot of tension on that. It's pretty simple. I mean, the design is just a real simple cross, but I imagine this would fire them pretty good. Well, should we pick one up? This looks like the best of the three here.
Yeah.
Pretty.
See how much it is.
Pretty solid. 这个怎么卖? 150. Do you think it's a good price?
Really?
Maybe.
That doesn't sound very convincing.
Let me see if I have 150. Oh. Okay, 150. You drive a hard bargain. So we've got our Lisu crossbow. Now we just have to get to the site of the competition, which is definitely on the path less traveled. Whoa! Quicksand. I just lost my shoe.
We finally come to a spot on the hillside where the contest is being held. It's not clear if there are any set rules. Mostly the men just take turns firing at a small target about 15 meters away.
Is it mostly the Lisu tribe that uses the crossbows, or everyone who lives in Yunnan?
As far as Ying knows, only the Lisu use crossbows. But I've heard other ethnic groups do too.
So all these men are Lisu.
Yeah, Lisu. They are
Okay.
Lisu.
It's cool to see. I mean, it looks like it's still popular for the young guys too. Oh, nice. That guy is good. He might be the best one out here.
Look, he doesn't look at all Chinese, does he? Is he very sort of a classic Lisu face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After watching for a while, we decide it's time for the non-Li Su among us to give it a try.
Sure.
Okay, they make it look fairly straightforward, huh?
Stretch them in their stomach.
Oh, man. 下来.
Come on.
Oh, man. I know, it's...
That was because the trigger was wrong.
Yeah. Oh, okay, right into the ground.
I didn't hear that satisfying sound. What is that supposed to do, Pete?
I don't know. I just saw everybody else doing it. To push it with the thumb? Much better. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Oh! A little high.
These guys are making it look easy. But they must know something we don't.
Okay.
Where did that go?
Into the ground.
Okay.
All right, I think we need some help.
I gotta keep practicing.
你好. That guy was the best. 可以帮助我们? Luckily for us, the Li Su guys are only too ready to help a couple of foreigners get the hang of it.
All these guys are pulling it back in their stomach. I don't know how they're doing that. It's hard enough to get it just on your hip.
Gotta have some crazy muscles. Okay, so then he licks it. Okay, I'll try yours. All right. The secrets. Okay, ready? And then which way? Okay. Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Whoa. Way high. Yeah? All right.
Oh, you hit the target.
There we go.
All right. Here we go.
Your arrow has no point, by the way.
All right, I think I better retire. That was... Then, the best Li Su marksman starts talking to us, but we can't quite understand what he's saying.
What is he saying? Because he's not speaking Mandarin anymore, right? Is he speaking Lisu?
Yeah.
It turns out he's extending us an invitation.
He went to invite you to his home.
So Ying, is he from here?
No, he doesn't live here. He lives 40 kilometers away from here.
可以走吧. Let's go.
We say goodbye to Ying and wait for our crossbow buddy Xiaopi to pick us up for the 40-kilometer ride to his house.
Hey, here comes Xiaopi.
Oh.
Hey, Xiaopi. It's going to be quite an adventure, we hope. We don't speak Li Su, and he doesn't speak more than a few words of Mandarin.
Bye.
If there's ever a moment to really get lost in China, this may be it.
We're hardly out of town when the road narrows and begins to snake through some of the most difficult terrain we've ever seen in China.
It's crazy watching people in this area, you know, I mean, they live on such steep hills in both directions. The road is like the only flat piece of land you got here, this and the river, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you imagine that river carved all of this, you know, rivers like that, and you still see a few of the little waterfalls coming off the mountains. It's just really tough terrain.
Yeah, look at this rapids right here.
I've heard people go whitewater rafting on this river, but I gotta say, it looks pretty dangerous.
Yeah, it looks like some gnarly whitewater up here.
Driving through this landscape, it's easy to see why it took so long to build roads, and why the Li Su were historically so isolated from the rest of China. I mean, people here were so subdivided that there were some of the ethnic groups that were known for living on the top of the hills, and some that were known for living down by the river.
And you see some of these settlements and little villages that are, you know, located just up top on some of the mountains here. You kind of wonder how they ever decided to stick it there in the first place, you know, their little village, because it just seems like such a hard place to make a life.
Yeah, how do you get supplies up there? How do you even get them across the river? You can see why this landscape kept all the minority groups separate for so long. you know, if you can't cross the river very easily, you're probably not going to meet your next door neighbor, and you're probably not going to know someone, you know, 40 kilometers away.
So, like, there are a couple different languages of Lisu, like a couple different dialects. So Xiaopi speaks, you know, one dialect, but people who live, you know, within a few kilometers of him, like, they basically speak an entirely different language, even though it's still from the same Lisu family.
It's got to be really interesting to only be able to communicate with a few thousand people.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine with English you can communicate with billions of people. He seems like a cool guy, though. I wish we could speak a little bit better.
About 5 hours after saying goodbye to Ying, our truck finally pulls to a stop across a gorge from Xiaopi's village.
You're kidding me.
Is this your house? That's your house over there. No way.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, man. Jeff, this is spectacular. You got to check this out.
Man.
All of the village is on that side.
Jeez. You think they just use these zip lines to get across?
It looks like it. Did you see those two guys come flying through?
Yeah. That's super cool. Man, the most we ever have to do is walk up our front steps or maybe like a long driveway. This is a totally different ballgame. Jeez, these guys are booking it.
It looks like it's about 200 meters across the gorge and at least 60 meters above the rocks and river below. It looks dangerous. Dangerous enough they suggest no one crosses without a Lisu native on the zip line.
I think we'll take their advice.
All right, so this is my guide across the river here. Ni hao. Dude, I know I can swim. I'm just not so sure about my camera gear. Uh-oh.
Just hang on tight, Jeff.
Yeah, I will. This looks like fun, but... Oh, sit back. Okay.
And the next thing I know, we're moving.
All right.
Oh, man.
Oh, wow, what a way to travel. This is so much better than walking to work.
Then it's my turn. All right, sit back, relax.
And hope the road doesn't break.
No way. Oh, man. That is absolutely crazy.
Isn't that?
I can't believe that's how they go to and from the village. That is crazy.
Way to go to school.
Oh, hala. Finally, it's time to climb the steps to Xiaopi's house. Steps of which there are approximately 42 billion.
Eventually, the steps give way to a small rocky path. Xiaopi assures us that we're almost there. And we are.
It's your house? It's convenient, right by the zip line.
Except up all those stairs.
After we dump our gear in the house, Xiaopi tells us that if we want to know how the Lisu live, chopping firewood is a good place to start. All right. Guess we're gonna have to work for our supper.
Evidently, most of the cooking and heating of homes is done with firewood, which is gathered and cut in the traditional way. No sign of a chainsaw anywhere.
Well done.
Look at all the trees around here. I think the Chinese government just recently said, you know, you're not allowed to cut down trees here unless you're actually doing it for your own home or firewood or something like that.
It doesn't take too long to realize the pace of life in this village is a lot more leisurely than it is in the cities.
Well, farming this kind of land, you know, I mean, even to get up to the houses here, having to take a zip line, it's not just, you know, every day is not the same sort of walk in the park that we're used to.
I don't know how much progress we actually made, but I'm getting hungry.
After the sun sets and the moon rises behind the mountains, a strange stillness comes over the village. The only sound is the grass and trees shaking in the wind.
and maybe one other sound.
What other sound would that be?
The sound of that traditional Li Su after-dinner pastime.
Watching Chinese game shows and soap operas with perfect reception.
And since we can't really communicate with our hosts, it's not a bad way to spend the hour or so before bedtime.
It's so bizarre being out here, isn't it? I mean, we're sitting in a thatched hut in the middle of Yunnan, you know, after crossing over here on a zip line, watching TV with decent reception.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. I mean, when was the last time we slept in a bed together?
No,
You're like
man.
5?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
At some point, we notice there's a dried rat hanging from a string in the ceiling. But we're too polite to mention it.
But not too polite to get a close-up for a collection of strange things we've seen hanging from ceilings.
And so we bed down for the night, with our host and his wife in the bed at our feet. Comfy.
And if we get the urge for a midnight snack,
Hey Pete, is that your feet?
no, Jeff, I think it's Xiaopi's.
Morning can't get here a moment too soon.
起床了，可以打猎了。起床了，两个起床了，你们两个。
Did you hear the rats last night?
Yeah, I think there was one that ran right along our headboard here and then jumped off. They're all over the place.
You think Xiaopi was carrying that crossbow as a threat?
I'm not sure. All right, thankfully nothing was living in there this morning. Always shake your shoes, otherwise get surprised with a scorpion or, in this case, I don't know, maybe a rat? 好的，谢谢。
好，谢谢。Toothpaste?
Yeah, please. Yeah, this is a nice little flip thing there.
It's called bedhead, Jeff.
Very nice.
It's funny, you know, I only ever seem to really appreciate a place when I'm brushing my teeth, because it's so different from, you know, where you usually do it. I'm not sitting in front of my bathroom mirror at home anymore, you know? Just out in the middle of nowhere in Yunnan.
It's one of the few times you stop moving for a second and actually taking scenery.
Yeah.
We spend our last few hours in the village taking pictures of traditional Li Su life. Kids playing, women in Li Su dress, some working, some standing around looking pretty. A man grinding corn, a few kernels at a time.
Finally, it's time to say goodbye to Xiaopi and the Li Su.
And take one last ride on the zip line.
Having experienced the Li Su culture, we want to compare it with another of Yunnan's ethnic minorities. So we'll travel to the deep south, to the home of the Dai people.
The Dai are known throughout China for their legendary water festival, reliance on elephants, and environmental consciousness. This is a theme park created to share their culture. The Dai minority group is one of the larger minority groups in Yunnan. They've actually taken this whole rainforest here and turned it into a bioreserve where they can really educate people about their culture and the environment they've lived in for generations.
Yeah, and the Dai have always been really into preservation of the rainforest. The fact that they believe the forest makes water, which feeds the land, which gives them food, and then the food goes to the people. So it's all really interconnected.
Yeah, everything's pretty integral, including the elephants. I mean, they're a big part of the culture as well as the religion. They use them for farming and all sorts of things. But I'm really curious to see actually how the role of elephants in Dai culture has evolved over the last 20 or so years. Well, it seems to have evolved into elephants as performers, because unlike African elephants, the Asian variety are actually quite trainable.
Well, they used to do a lot of farm work and all that kind of stuff, and looks like now they're just on show, huh? The Dai trainers put the elephants through their various acts, which are actually pretty impressive. It makes sense since the Dai have always maintained a close working relationship with elephants. That is hilarious.
That is so odd. This is such a weird scene.
Whoa!
Holy cow!
Oh my God, I never knew they could do that.
Me neither. Wow. Bravo.
That is amazing. I mean, it's kind of hard not to laugh because do they know how ridiculous they look? Although, I have to say, it's pretty talented.
They were used around here primarily for farming and transportation. They used to till the fields, actually. You can see kind of the way they step, but...
So now they're kicking soccer balls. I mean, you would have thought. Is that a promotion or a demotion?
I'm not quite sure. Very nice. Bravo, bravo.
Oh, man. For anyone who thinks all this soft living has softened up the elephants, a tug of war with one of them is just the thing to convince you you're wrong.
I mean, how many of us
One
are
elephant versus, what, 15?
Yeah.
He's got no chance.
No chance. Watch out. Come on! Man, he's not even trying. Hey, I think we're running out of supporters.
Come on, guys. It's just the four of us.
Hey. Huh? I think we could have had him. I mean, yeah.
No, we totally
We gave great leadership up front, which is really important for this kind of thing. And to show our appreciation for their labors, we get to feed the elephants little green bananas. Here you go. Man, they're super sensitive with the trunk. All right. Wow, he's just shoveling those down. Hey, don't forget to chew. You gotta chew first. The Dai Park is serene, and there's plenty to see. But both of us are wondering if building ethnic theme parks for tourists is really the right way to preserve minority culture.
So we're wondering what a local Dai historian has to say about it. The guy we're going to talk to, his name is Ai Nuo, and he's actually a Dai journalist who's been reporting on the news here for the last 30+ years. His own people call him the garbage collector.
Yeah. Well, they call him that because he collects all of their junk. But for I know, it's all about preserving the material history of the Dai people. This is gonna be cool.
你好，
你好，你是 I know？ 我就是啊，真的。你好。
啊，你好。
这是我的翻译。
哦，好的。
你好。You're the translator. Wow. Man, he really does collect a ton of stuff. Check this out.
Yeah. Look at all these books down here, Pete.
Yeah, this is like a museum.
Man, this stuff is incredible in here.
Yeah, this is hardly garbage. Wow, look at these pictures. Huh? 这个都有意思. This is so interesting. What are these? 这个是什么？
这个叫牛角号，用牛角来做的。
Ai Noah explains that a Dai hunter would blow this horn to signal back to the village that he had had a successful hunt.
Wow, that's great.
And the other one was to call for help. Over tea, he explains his passion for collecting.
It's pretty much the same reason all cultures have their own collectors and historians. Because the past is important, and it's good to know where you came from.
He's also proud of the fact that unlike many Chinese minorities, the Dai have a written language to preserve, which is why books and manuscripts are so important.
What is this? 这个是什么？
这是我们傣族贝叶经一类，是经书，
Like a sutra.
是棉纸做出来的。
Whoa. Yeah, it's all handwritten.
India introduced the Dai to this long-lasting method of writing on palm leaves over 1,000 years ago.
这个写这个要多长时间？
这个起码要5个月。
Wow, so this takes 5 months to make. That.
Look
at all
how
that.
thick it is.
His collection ranges from farm tools to festival masks.
Who are these guys? 这个是什么？
这是我们傣族传统那个。
One thing he says catches our attention, a reference to an annual Dai water splashing ceremony that takes place here in the park every day of the year.
A water splashing ceremony? Now that sounds like our kind of party.
Dai architecture grew out of their interpretation of a traditional myth involving a dog and a phoenix. Ai Noa explains that houses used to be built in the shape of a dog to help with the rain.
And then a phoenix landed on the house and gave them the idea to shape the roof like its wings. The purpose was to keep rainwater and beasts from entering the house.
So those are the beaks of the phoenix.
Yes.
And then is it the ears of the phoenix?
Yeah.
He takes us to visit a traditional Dai well. Water is central to Dai culture because it's believed to be the source of all life.
So what is this place in here? Is this a well?
这是傣井。
Oh, this is the Dai well.
Hello. Do people still use this?
他说现在人们还在用吗？
哎，还在用，我看试试给你们看。
So they actually come and get water from here.
他说现在也是从这里打水吗？
哎，对对，他每天早上啊，都清清的水。
Oh, nice.
Let me see.
This
Oh
is
wow,
cool.
that's
This
nice and cold.
Looks like bamboo.
Yeah. And why are there so many mirrors on all of these? On the eyes of the lions and on the top here?
This is for the, if the bad things say the ghost coming, they cannot come.
Yeah, that's cool.
So this is actually to protect the place from ghosts then?
Yeah.
Because the mirrors reveal the true identity. So that's pretty cool. So to your eye, it might look like a human, but the mirror will tell the truth. Finally, it's time to head over to the Water Splashing Festival, which the Dai in this park perform every day of the year.
So Tina, what is the importance of water in Dai culture?
就说傣族为什么对水对傣族来说非常的重要呢？
因为傣族认为水是傣家人的生命，没有水了，人就活不下去。
So it's basically water is necessary for life, and it also helps wash away the bad things, right? Which is why there's the bathing festival, or the water splashing festival.
Yeah, and I've heard the Water Splashing Festival is supposed to be pretty fun too. So on a hot day like today.
So are we gonna splash all of them as well?
Yeah.
Yeah? Or they're probably gonna splash us, right? They're probably much better practice than we are.
We will have them together, okay?
Okay.
Let's
Team
have
up?
the fun. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
At the end of the pretty girl-lined avenue, there's a big shallow pool. People begin to drift in, and you can feel an air of excitement building.
The women begin to circle the pool slowly. And we're given little blue plastic bowls. We're supposed to use our good eyes to locate the pretty girls, is what he says. And then, without any warning, the Water Splashing Festival starts to earn its name.
Originally, this festival celebrated the birth of Buddha, his enlightenment, and acceptance into nirvana.
To us, it seems like a good way to attract tourists, to stay cool, and to meet some pretty girls.
Man, been a great way to keep the tradition alive.
Yeah, we're slightly damp, just slightly.
Many, if not most, of the Dai people we see actually live in the village, earning a living doing what the Dai people have done for centuries. Only this time, in front of tourists.
Everywhere you look, there's something interesting to see and to photograph.
This whole Dai area is fantastic. I mean, everyone just feels so chill here. You know, they're getting a lot done, but they're enjoying themselves too.
It's also great that there are people like I know who are really working hard to preserve it.
And by having this tourist village set up, it seems like they're really doing it. So they'll be able to sort of toe that line between making a good living while still preserving some of their traditional habits.
As Aino said, it's a balancing act. You know, how can they balance keeping the culture authentically alive and attracting tourists to the village?
Still, I have to wonder if attracting tourists is the best way to keep traditions alive.
Certainly some people don't think so.
But at least this way, the Dai in this park are making a living and exposing people to their culture.
I think it helps a lot that the park was built around an original village. So people aren't just showing up to work that day, and they live in the village, they work in the village, and it's the same community. So hopefully that'll make it more sustainable.
They've celebrated the Water Splashing Festival for more than 700 years.
It's hard to ignore that part of your culture if you do it every day. It was fun to get out there and really experience that part of the culture.
Yeah.
Progress will come, and things will change here in Yunnan. But Pete and I can only hope that in the face of a changing China, the Lisu, Dai, and China's other minorities will hold on to the traditions that make them unique.